The little Brazilian team limp on into 1982, having slimmed down to one car, an updated version of last year's, though there's a new one on the drawing board if they can scrape together enough resources to build it. The team will be hoping simply to survive in 1982, and that the increase in grid sizes will translate to more qualifications. They've retained Chico Serra and released the more talented but less well-funded Rosberg, which says a lot. Although Serra had only qualified 5 times in 1981 and only finished 2 of those, the young Brazilian can hardly be blamed for the failings of the car he had to work with. It was certainly a show of faith in him for the team to retain his services in 1982 when other well-funded drivers were available, and he would hope to repay that faith by doing the best he could with what he was given once again. It has now been 3 years since Alfa Romeo's much-heralded F1 comeback, and aside from the odd flash of pace, they've had very little to show for their almost unlimited budget. For 1982, though, they were expected to improve as they joined the Turbo Brigade, a new engine being designed to replace the heavy and underpowered V12 they'd had so far. The new chassis to hold it, the 181, would be designed by Gérard Ducarouge, ceremoniously fired by Ligier partway through 1981, and although the Alfa Romeo team were famously secretive about their R&D, there were reasons to be optimistic. Meanwhile, the Auto Delta squad, who've run the racing team since their return, have been replaced with the Euro Racing outfit. We'll see if this makes a difference. Bruno Giacomelli continues his long association with the team, but eyebrows were raised with the return to Alfa Romeo of Andrea de Cesaris after his demolition derby year with McLaren, thanks to the Marlborough connection. To say that de Cesaris had made an impact in his first Formula One season with McLaren would be literally true, but hardly in the way he would have wanted. The hot-headed Italian showed occasional flashes of speed, but wrecked so many expensive chassis that the McLaren team even withdrew him from a race in case he did it again. His return to Alfa Romeo was more down to his personal Marlborough sponsorship than any racing reasons. The cheerful Giacomelli had been unlucky on several occasions in 1981, but had done his best in the recalcitrant Alfa 179 and come good at the end of the season with a 4th place in Canada and his first podium finish, 3rd place in Caesars Palace. Giacomelli had been with the team since its inception in 1979 and would continue to provide valuable development testing while hoping for better fortune in 1982. After high hopes for 1981, Ligier had started badly before coming good towards the end of the season. The major disappointment had been the second car, following Jean-Pierre Jabouille's ultimately failed attempts to come back from injury. Patrick Tambay had not delivered in the second half of the season after taking over, and was dropped by the team in favour of recruiting Eddie Cheever, who had brought the dreadful Tyrrell home in the points 5 times in 1981. Cheever would be the team's first non-francophone driver and the only non-Frenchman besides Belgian Jackie Ickx. Matra were working on a turbo V6 engine, and Michel Beaujean and Jabouille were collaborating on the new JS19 chassis to contain it. In the meantime, the team would continue with the JS17 Matra V12 combination that had won twice in 1981. Cheever had come as a revelation in 1981, wringing decent performances out of the Tyrrell and consistently outperforming his teammate Michele Alboreto, himself touted as a future prospect. Whether or not he would cope with driving in the fiercely patriotic Ligier team alongside an established team leader like Lafitte would remain to be seen. 4th place in the Drivers' Championship in 1981 didn't quite tell the whole story. Lafitte won 2 races and took 5 other podium finishes in a brilliant second half to the season, and with a bit more luck in Caesars Palace could have won the world title. The Ligier team is very much Team Lafitte right now, with Jacques and his brother-in-law come team manager Jean-Pierre Jabouille having most of the power in the team. He will be hoping to put the early season turmoil of last year behind him and hit the ground running. New designer Harvey Postlethwaite moved from Fittipaldi at the end of 1981 and led a major revamp of the chassis to form the 126C2, a carbon fibre and aluminium honeycomb monocoque that was lighter and more manoeuvrable. It certainly looks good in testing with great times, and the drivers reporting much improved handling and drivability. The team will be hoping for better in 1982, and their demanding corporate masters and equally demanding fans will certainly expect much more. The cheerful Canadian had impressed despite his equipment in 1981, and his 2 race wins were scant reward for a ballsy, red-blooded approach that often saw the car drifting sideways through corners as he struggled to wring pace out of the sluggish Ferrari. The Tifosi, the team, the nation of Canada, and Villeneuve himself will all hope for better in 1982. Didier Pironi had struggled in 1981, and while this was partially the fault of the car, the cool Frenchman was regularly outpaced by his teammate and looked a little out of his depth at times. However, he was able to convince the Ferrari team bosses that his first-year wobbles were just that, and that he would improve in 1982. Now he just has to make it happen. Jackie Oliver's team will have to adjust to life after their talismanic driver Riccardo Patrese after his departure for the big time, but all is not doom and gloom. A new ground effects car, the Dave Wass designed A4, is to be ready for the first race, and sponsors Nordica and Ragno remain loyal despite Patrese's exit. In comes the reliable Swiss driver Marc Surer and Italian rookie Mauro Baldi, courtesy of Ragno providing some more sponsorship. The affable Swiss driver had had a season of two halves in 1981. A promising start with Ensign, including a fourth place in Brazil and sixth in Monaco, had proved no help when he was dropped in favour of the better-funded Eliseo Salazar. Winding up at Theodore, his chances for heroics were rather lower, but he proved solid and reliable and brought the car home more often than not. A reliable development driver was just what Arrows happened to be looking for in what looked like it would be a transitional year. Mauro Baldi began racing life as a rally driver at age 22, before turning in 1975 to track racing in a Renault 5, then into Formula 3, where by 1980 he had established himself as a talented driver and won the 1980 Monaco F3 race. 1981 was Baldi's year, and he dominated the European Formula 3 Championships, winning a record 8 races and earning himself a step straight up into F1 courtesy of the Ragno Ceramics concern, who were looking for a new Italian driver to put forward for the Arrows team after Patrese and Storr's exit. 1981 had been a trying year for the little Italian Osella team, between troubles with the car and the tragic death of mechanic Giovanni Amadeo at Zolder, and rarely qualified before finding their feet a little with the acquisition of Jean-Pierre Jarier, who arrived at Silverstone and qualified more often than not, finishing most of the time into the bargain. For 1982, Osella managed to retain the services of Jarier, and a new car, the FA1D, was under development and expected sometime during the early European rounds. Joining Jarier with the backing of sponsors Pioneer was young F2 prodigy Riccardo Paletti. Jarier had found himself at Osella after being dropped by Ligier following Jean-Pierre Jabouille's return from injury, and soon carved out a niche for himself at the team, instantly improving on the performances of any of the team's other drivers and earning himself not only a full-time drive for 1982, but undisputed number 1 status. Young Riccardo Paletti was a junior karate champion at age 13 and later made the alpine skiing youth team, but by 19 he'd fixed on motor racing and entered 9 races in the 1978 Formula Super Ford series and led his first race for 18 laps. A full season in Formula 3 followed, and despite disappointing results he was picked by Mike Earle to join his new Onyx Formula 2 team in 1981. Earle's faith was well placed, and Paletti finished second in his first race, and at one stage was tying for second overall with Stefan Johansson before results fell away and he finished 10th. Electronics company Pioneer wanted to sponsor Paletti into Formula 1 in 1982, but he was reluctant, preferring to get another year's experience in F2. However, eventually he decided not to miss his chance after all and took his plunge with the Osella team. Teddy Yip's small Hong Kong-based team had had a decent first season, although a point in their first race turned out to be the season highlight. With little sponsorship money for development, the team nonetheless had a new car, the TY02, on the drawing board, though the TY01 would be used in South Africa. Patrick Tombe, who had scored their only point, was released by Ligier at the end of 1981, and Yip had hoped to re-sign him for 1982, but instead the Frenchman announced his retirement for the sport, saying he just didn't get on with the twitchy ground effect cars. As a replacement, in came Irish driver Derek Daly, an undoubtedly talented driver who hadn't done his reputation any good in the awful March in 1981. 1981 was not Derek Daly's best season, and 6 DNQs on the bounce at the start of the year didn't help his morale. Things picked up once Salazar left and the team concentrated solely on Daly's car, and he managed to qualify for all races bar 1 after that. Although no points came, he finished as high as 7th. Daly's signing was good for Theodore, but seemed to be a sign of the former McLaren man's career winding down. The successful Formula 2 team had had a baptism of fire in Formula 1 with just 1 qualification apiece for Brian Henton and Derek Warwick, as the team struggled with an overweight chassis dubbed the Pig for its poor handling. Lavish sponsorship by Candy Electronics helped pay for a new chassis, the carbon-fibred TG183, though no date has yet been set for its introduction, and improvements to John Hart's turbo engine. Testing showed improvements on pace from 1981, even with the TG181 chassis, and the team has retained Derek Warwick, though Henton was dropped in favour of Italian driver Teo Fabi, insisted on by Candy after their attempt to capture Mauro Baldi fell through. Warwick had gained a great reputation in the junior formula, and his partnership with Brian Henton had dominated Formula 2 in 1980, but his season failing to qualify until the very last race of the season had done neither his reputation nor his confidence any good at all. Nonetheless, he was a popular figure in the paddock, and everyone hoped for better fortune for him in 1982. Another engineering student-turned-racer, Teodorico Fabi, took up karting in his teen years, and by the age of 20 was the European karting champion before moving up into Formula Ford 1600, taking the 1977 title. Formula 3 came next, and Fabi impressed by winning 3 races in his debut season with the Forti Corse team, running a March chassis on his way to 4th in the championship, which got him a drive with the Works March Formula 2 team for 1980. And he had been expected to take the step up with the team into Formula 1 in 1981, but lost out to the experienced Derek Daly. Fabi headed to America to race in Can-Am with Paul Newman's team, and won 4 races, narrowly missing out on the title. His undoubted talent led Italian electrical goods firm Candy to sponsor him into the second Toleman seat for 1982.